Welcome to Mindset and Stone podcasts, where we dive deep into the most compelling books on the shelf. Join hosts Dave and Poppy as they uncover the stories, themes, and ideas that shape our understanding and inspire curiosity. Get ready to explore the big ideas that leave a lasting impact. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Mindset and Stone podcast.
It is great to be here.
So, there is this really haunting realization from an old Hasidic tale about a rabbi named Zusia.
Oh, yeah, the deathbed story.
Right. On his deathbed, he was terrified. But he wasn't worried about failing to live up to, the world's greatest heroes.
No, he said something much deeper.
Yeah, he said, "In the coming world, they will not ask me, 'Why were you not Moses?' They will ask me, 'Why were you not Zusia?'"
Oh, yeah.
Because he was terrified that he had failed to actually be himself.
Which is such a common fear, right?
Completely. And that is the core mission of this deep dive today, flipping a script that almost all of us have been handed since childhood.
The willpower myth.
Exactly. I mean, most of us have been taught that finding your purpose means picking a lofty goal out in the distance and then using pure willpower to just force your life to match it.
Well, you pick a hero or a high ideal and you just hammer yourself into that shape.
Right. But today, we are unpacking the brilliant insights from Parker J. Palmer's book, Let Your Life Speak, Listening for the Voice of Vocation.
And Palmer completely dismantles that myth.
He really does. So if you've ever felt just completely exhausted trying to live up to these abstract expectations.
Or if you feel like you're wearing someone else's face just to get through the workday.
Yes, exactly. If that sounds like you, then this deep dive is going to help you decode the clues your life is already leaving for you.
Because the traditional view of vocation is actually incredibly damaging.
How so?
Well, the standard cultural narrative tells us that true vocation comes from a voice out there somewhere, like it makes moral demands on you.
Basically asking you to become someone you aren't yet.
Right. But Palmer argues the exact opposite. True vocation doesn't come from a voice out there. It comes from listening to the voice in here. It is about understanding the original selfhood you were given at birth and honoring it instead of, trying to override it.
Which is funny because Palmer actually lived through the failure of that external myth firsthand.
Oh, he absolutely did.
When he was in his early 30s, he woke up to all these deep questions about what his life was supposed to mean, and he kept hearing this old Quaker saying, "Let your life speak."
But he completely misunderstood what it meant at first.
Yeah, he thought "let your life speak" meant he should let the highest truths and values guide his life.
So he looked around at heroes, people like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Gandhi.
Right, and he lined up all their loftiest ideals and actively tried to force his own life to conform to them.
He genuinely thought he was doing the noble thing.
But I have to push back a little on why that's so wrong, because, our whole culture constantly praises building character. We use these external values like a suit of armor to make us strong and upstanding. So why is that such a problem? If someone is striving to be as peaceful as Gandhi, shouldn't we applaud that?
Well, we should applaud the ideal, sure, but not the method, because an exoskeleton is ultimately rigid, and it's suffocating. Sure, it might keep you standing temporarily when things get tough, but it is heavy, it's exhausting, and eventually it just crushes the soft, authentic self inside.
That makes a lot of sense.
Palmer admits the results of his own experiment were sometimes laughable and sometimes pretty grotesque.
Because he was trying to live from the outside in.
Exactly, rather than the inside out. He had found a really noble way to live a life that simply wasn't his own. It was a distortion.
A distortion of his true self.
Right. You do immense violence to your true self when you force it to carry an exoskeleton of abstract moral norms that don't actually fit your internal ecology.
So the pressure to be a world historical figure is heavy, but the pressure to be authentically yourself is actually much harder.
Because it requires profound self-awareness.
Yeah. It reminds me of the origin of the word vocation itself. It comes from the Latin word for voice.
A calling that you hear.
Right, not a goal that you pursue. But if we're constantly drowning out that inner voice with external oughts and shoulds, how do we ever hear it?
Palmer suggests we have to look backward before we can look forward. He observed this concept of the true self in his newborn granddaughter. He watched her in her earliest days and realized she arrived in the world with a sacred shape. She wasn't just raw, blank material waiting for the world to mold her.
She had innate inclinations.
Proclivities, things she was instinctively drawn to and repelled by. We all arrive with these birthright gifts.
But then society gets a hold of us.
That's the tragedy. We spend the first half of our lives abandoning those gifts to fit into societal slots. To be employable, to be acceptable.
To be good.
Exactly. And then we spend the second half of our lives desperately trying to reclaim them.
Which brings us to something highly practical you can try right now. Think of it as an audit of your childhood clues.
I love this exercise.
Palmer tells a great story about looking back at his own childhood to bypass his adult ego. When he was a kid in grade school, he was obsessed with airplanes.
He spent hours making these intricate 12-page books about aviation, right?
Yeah, he drew cross-sections of wings, typed out explanations of aerodynamics, and hand-illustrated the covers.
And for years, he thought that meant he was supposed to be a pilot.
But looking back as an adult, stripped of all those societal expectations, he realized the deeper truth. He wanted to make books. He was acting out the life of an author long before he even knew what the word meant.
That is the power of unconditioned interest.
So if you are listening, run this audit. Before the world told you what was valuable or what was profitable, what did you do purely for the joy of it?
When you run that audit on your own childhood, you often find the exact mechanism of your true vocation, just waiting to be dusted off.
But once you uncover those clues, you are faced with a very uncomfortable reality.
The gap between who you truly are and how you are currently living.
Palmer calls this the crisis of the divided life.
And he uses Rosa Parks as the ultimate example of resolving that crisis.
Yes. We often think of her refusal to give up her seat on that bus as a calculated political strategy.
But her own explanation was deeply personal and internal.
She said she did it because she was tired.
Right, but she didn't mean her feet were tired after a long day.
She meant her soul was tired. She was tired of playing by racist rules that demanded she diminish herself.
She was tired of the cognitive dissonance between her inherent dignity and the actions she was forced to perform every day.
The exhaustion of the divided life is profound.
It's the deep fatigue of constantly conspiring in your own diminishment. Rosa Parks made the internal decision that her outer actions would no longer contradict her inner truth.
She simply said, "I will live divided no more."
And that is an agonizingly difficult threshold to cross.
Because the systems we live in, like corporate, social, sometimes even familial systems, they rely on us maintaining that division.
They rely on us faking it to keep the peace.
So ask yourself right now, where are you living a divided life?
Identify one area this week where you are faking it to please others.
Or to fit into a system that just doesn't align with your core values. It doesn't have to be a monumental historical moment.
It could be finally speaking up in a weekly meeting where you usually swallow your ideas.
Or quitting a social committee that trains your soul but looks good on a resume. Find one small way to align your outer reality with your inner truth.
But here's where the journey gets deeply complex.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Aligning your inner and outer life sounds beautiful. But what happens when you follow your authentic nature and immediately hit a brick wall?
Because you definitely will.
Finding your true self isn't just about following the clues of your potential. It requires paying equal attention to the clues of your limitations.
Palmer encountered a traditional Quaker concept for this, didn't he?
Yes, when he was feeling totally lost in his career. It is the concept of way closing.
Right. Because he was desperately waiting for a way to open for him, like hoping a clear, sunny path would just present itself.
But a wise, older Quaker woman told him something deeply counterintuitive.
She said that in her 60-plus years of living, way had almost never opened in front of her.
But she noted a lot of way had closed behind her. And that had the exact same guiding effect.
It's a brilliant reframing of failure and rejection. When a door slams shut, it offers just as much directional guidance as a door opening.
Palmer learned this the hard way in the summer before he started graduate school at Berkeley.
Oh, the sociology job.
Yeah, he took a sociology research job and was unceremoniously fired.
A massive blow to his young ego.
Well, he had been goofing off, making cynical jokes about the project, and generally being a terrible employee.
But the deeper truth he realized years later was that the job had absolutely nothing to do with his true nature.
His adolescent rebellion, his self-sabotage, it was actually his soul's way of violently rejecting a path that was crosswise to his grain.
Way closed behind him, and it saved him from a miserable career.
Exactly.
But wait, I'm going to stop you right there, because this is where I really struggle with Palmer's philosophy.
Okay, lay it on me.
We are conditioned to idolize grit and resilience. Like, the classic American narrative is that if you hit a wall, you read a book by a Navy SEAL, you dig deep, and you smash through it.
Right.
If we start interpreting every closed door as a sign from the universe to give up, aren't we just finding a poetic excuse for quitting when things get hard?
That's a fair question.
How do you actually know the difference between a natural limit and just a difficult hurdle?
That is the most vital distinction you can make. And Palmer's very careful here. We absolutely must differentiate between systemic oppression or difficult learning curves, which do require grit, and the biological or ecological limits of the self.
Ecological limit.
Think of it like this. Human beings have an internal ecology, a nature, just like anything else in the universe.
Okay.
You cannot force a piece of oak wood to act like tempered steel. No amount of grit will make the wood hold up a skyscraper. It will just snap.
That makes total sense.
That is an ecological limit. Honoring that limit isn't quitting. It is accepting reality.
And the story he tells about almost becoming a college president perfectly illustrates this difference between ego and ecology.
Oh, the Clearness Committee story.
Yes, he was offered the opportunity to interview for a presidency, and he sat down with a Quaker Clearness Committee.
For those who don't know, a Clearness Committee is a group of peers who don't offer advice. They just ask open, probing questions to help you hear your own internal truth.
Right, so the committee asks him all these high-level strategic questions about his vision for the college.
And Palmer is knocking them out of the park. His intellect is highly engaged.
But then someone asks a deceptively simple question. What would you like most about being a president?
And suddenly, Palmer stumbles.
He completely freezes. He starts listing all the things he would hate.
Right, because he would hate giving up teaching.
He'd hate dealing with campus politics. He would despise glad-handing wealthy donors for money, and he'd hate wearing a suit every day.
And the committee gently stops him and says, Parker, we asked what you would like most.
So finally, he has to dig past all his intellectual defenses to the very bottom of the barrel.
He gives the most brutally honest answer possible.
He says, I guess what I'd like most is getting my picture in the paper with the word president under it.
And the room just goes dead silent.
I love the response from the committee. After this long, awkward silence, one person finally leans in and asks, Parker, can you think of an easier way to get your picture in the paper?
It completely punctures the illusion.
His desire for the job was entirely ego-driven. It had nothing to do with his ecological limits or his true gifts.
If he had taken that job out of sheer willpower, trying to smash through the closed door of his own nature, it would have been a disaster for him and the school.
Which is why we need to constantly run an ego versus ecology check on ourselves.
That's a great practical step.
Before you say yes to a new project, a promotion, or a major life commitment, write down your motivations. Be as brutally honest as Palmer was in that room.
Are the reasons grounded in your natural ecosystem? Do they actually utilize your innate gifts?
Or are they entirely ego-driven? Are you chasing a title, status, or a metaphorical picture in the paper?
If it is purely ego, you have to politely decline. If you don't, you are actively violating your own nature.
And violating your own nature has severe consequences. This is where Palmer's redefinition of burnout comes in.
It completely changed how I view exhaustion.
Same. We usually think of burnout as the result of giving too much, like a gas tank that has simply been driven until it is empty.
But Palmer argues that burnout doesn't come from giving all you have.
It reveals the nothingness from which you were trying to give in the first place.
You burn out when you are trying to give a gift you do not possess.
It is a profound mechanical shift in how we understand fatigue.
When you give from your organic reality, the giving actually renews you.
Like a fruit tree dropping its apples.
Exactly. Dropping the fruit doesn't exhaust the root system of the tree. The tree is designed to do it.
You only deplete yourself when you force a behavior that isn't naturally yours.
Like, if you are naturally an introverted strategist and you force yourself into a role as an extroverted, highly social cheerleader for a team,
you will burn out rapidly. Not because you're working too hard, but because you are generating a false energy from a void.
So the next time you feel completely burned out, stop and examine the mechanism of your exhaustion.
Don't just ask yourself, how can I rest? Rest is just a temporary patch if the underlying dynamic doesn't change.
Instead, ask yourself, am I trying to give something that isn't naturally mine to give?
Are you forcing an output that violates your ecology? Because if you keep ignoring those limits and letting your ego drive the machine, you are heading for a total collapse.
And that collapse is what Palmer calls the downward journey. It's the realization that ignoring our limits inevitably forces a crisis. We have to journey into our own darkness before we can safely lead ourselves or anyone else.
For Palmer, this manifested as a harrowing battle with clinical depression.
He spent endless months in what he vividly describes as the snake pit of the soul.
Dealing with a total eclipse of light, hope, and connection, He was completely detached from himself and the world.
It is a terrifying section of the book.
And I want to be careful here because telling someone in the grips of clinical depression that their illness is somehow good for them sounds almost offensive.
Very true.
But Palmer shares a reframing from his therapist that literally saved his life.
The therapist suggested that depression was not an enemy trying to crush him.
Instead, he asked, what if depression was the hand of a friend, pressing him down to safe ground?
It sounds counterintuitive until you understand the mechanics of how Palmer was living.
Right.
The therapist pointed out that Palmer had been living at an unsafe altitude.
He had built his entire life flying high on ego, pure intellect, and abstract ethical oughts.
He was completely disconnected from the reality of his own authentic nature. He was living in the thin air of who he thought he should be.
It makes me think of gravity. Imagine building a massive, towering skyscraper, but refusing to dig down and build a foundation. When that building inevitably collapses, gravity isn't evil. Gravity isn't an enemy trying to destroy you. Gravity is just enforcing the laws of physics.
The depression was the psychological gravity of his true self.
Exactly, bringing him violently back to Earth. The ground is literally the only safe place to start rebuilding.
That is the perfect analogy. Going down to the ground is an act of profound humility. And the etymology of the word humility is deeply relevant here. It shares a root with the word humus.
Like the soil.
Right, the rich, dark, decayed organic matter that actually feeds the roots of plants.
So the humiliation that brings us low, the failure that strips away our ego and shatters our false masks.
It is actually creating the fertile soil we need to regrow our lives from the ground up.
But you have to be willing to ride that descent all the way down, and that is terrifying.
Palmer tells a visceral story about this.
The outward bound retreat, right?
Yeah, right before his depression hit its lowest point, he is backed up to the edge of a cliff, 110 feet in the air,
Tied to a flimsy rope.
and told to rappel down the rock face. He is paralyzed. He keeps trying to lean away from the rock, doing it wrong, slamming his knees into the stone.
Because he's resisting it.
Finally, he freezes completely halfway down because he sees a deep, cavernous hole in the rock face that he has to swing around, and his fear just takes over.
He is hanging there, trembling, completely stuck, and the instructor yells up from below, if you can't get out of it, get into it.
That single phrase became his mantra for surviving his inner journey.
When you are descending into your own darkness, there is no parachute. There is no helicopter coming to rescue you.
You cannot outthink it or strategize your way around it.
You have to step directly into it. You have to ride the monsters all the way down to the humus.
And this is not just a personal healing exercise.
Yeah.
Palmer makes a brilliant pivot here.
Connecting this inner descent directly to leadership.
Because if a leader refuses to journey into their own darkness, if they refuse to face their own monsters, they will inevitably project those inner shadows onto everyone around them.
Leaders cast either shadow or light. If you haven't dealt with your own void, you will drag your team into it.
Palmer outlined several of these specific leadership shadows.
There is the monster of deep-seated insecurity,
where a leader actively deprives others of their identity and autonomy just to prop up their own fragile ego.
There is the fear of chaos, where a leader creates rigid, suffocating rules and endless bureaucracy because they are terrified of the natural messiness of human interaction.
But the shadow that is perhaps the most insidious and the most common in modern workplaces is what Palmer calls functional atheism.
Functional atheism is such a fascinating concept, and it has nothing to do with whether you go to church or what your stated religious beliefs are.
Functional atheism is the unconscious, deeply rooted belief that ultimate responsibility for absolutely everything rests entirely with you.
It is the shadowy conviction that if you don't personally manage it, control it, and oversee it, everything will completely fall apart.
Exactly. Even people who claim to have deep spiritual faith often operate as functional atheists in their offices or in their households.
Let's look at how this actually manifests mechanically.
A leader suffering from functional atheism becomes a massive bottleneck.
They micromanage every detail.
They impose their will on every minor decision, and they actively destroy team dynamics because they cannot trust anyone else to carry the load.
They operate from a baseline assumption that the universe has no natural harmony or capability without their direct intervention.
It breeds immense resentment in their teams, and it inevitably leads to the leader's own burnout.
So how do we combat functional atheism?
You have to run a test on your own ego.
We challenge you to find one low-stakes task this week that you normally obsess over and simply drop it.
Let it go entirely, or delegate it to someone else and absolutely refuse to check up on it.
Watch what happens. Notice how the world continues to spin. The sun still comes up, and the project somehow survives without your anxious, constant intervention.
You have to experientially prove to your own ego that you are not the sole load-bearing pillar of the universe.
That practice of letting go is vital because once you let go of the ego's control and you start rebuilding your life from the humus,
From the ground up.
you realize something profound about the nature of growth. Growth is not a one-time upward trajectory. It is an ongoing organic cycle.
Palmer urges us to abandon the modern industrial metaphors we use for our lives and embrace the ecological metaphor of the seasons.
I am so glad we are landing here because the industrial metaphor is incredibly toxic for our collective mental health. Think about the language we use. We talk about ourselves like manufacturing plants. We make money, we make time, we make meaning.
We treat our lives like 247 assembly lines that are supposed to constantly churn out high-quality product.
We expect our lives to exist in a permanent state of summer output. But if you take a literal apple tree and demand that it produce apples in the freezing cold of January, the tree will die.
It will expend all its energy trying to bypass its natural dormancy, and it will literally kill itself.
Why do we expect human beings who are just as biological to bypass winter?
We expect it because we focus solely on the output and ignore the psychological necessity of the cycle. Every season has a vital, non-negotiable gift.
Palmer bypasses the literal definitions of the seasons and dives straight into their psychological meaning.
Take autumn. Psychologically, autumn is a season of decline, of loss, of things falling away.
But what is nature actually doing during a decline? It is scattering seeds with incredible abandon.
The losses we experience in our own autumns, like losing a job, a relationship ending, a dream shifting, they are profoundly painful.
But they are often the exact moments when the seeds of our future growth are being planted in the soil.
Even if we can't see them yet under the falling leaves.
And then comes winter. Psychologically, winter is harsh. It feels dormant, sometimes even dead.
We often view periods of inactivity or depression as wasted time.
But underneath the ice, nature is resting and renewing its core reserves.
More importantly, winter brings the gift of ultimate clarity. When all the beautiful foliage is stripped away, you can finally see the bare, structural reality of the trees.
You can see the landscape for what it truly is. When we go through our own winters of failure or grief, the comforting illusions are stripped away.
We finally get to see the solid bedrock of our lives.
Which prepares us for spring.
But Palmer is quick to point out that we romanticize spring.
We do.
Before spring is beautiful and green, it is plug ugly. It is mud, muck, and melting ice.
It is the literal humus we talked about earlier. Spring requires the messy, humiliating thawing of the frozen ground.
New beginnings are almost always awkward and muddy.
But from that mud, the green shoots of hope begin to grow with incredible tenacity, fueled by the rest of winter.
And finally, that growth bursts into the sheer abundance of summer.
And summer brings us to a profound realization about the difference between true abundance and the human myth of scarcity.
In the natural world, summer is a steady state of plenty.
But human psychology is obsessed with scarcity. No matter how much we have, we constantly operate under the assumption that there isn't enough to go around.
Not enough money, not enough power, not enough recognition, not enough love.
Palmer argues beautifully that scarcity is largely a human invention.
We actually create the scarcities we fear by hoarding.
Because we are afraid there won't be enough, we hoard resources.
Which ensures that others have too little and, ironically, leaves us feeling perpetually insecure anyway.
In the natural ecology, abundance is a communal act. Every single part of the ecosystem functions on behalf of the whole, and in turn is sustained by the whole.
Community doesn't just create abundance. Community is abundance.
So how do we apply this ecological reality to our daily lives?
First, you need to conduct a seasonal audit of your life right now.
Sit down and honestly identify what psychological season you are currently in.
Are you in an autumn, needing to let go of habits or roles that no longer serve you, scattering seeds for the future?
Are you in a winter of dormancy, where your only job is to survive the harshness, rest, and gain clarity?
Or you're in a spring of muddy, awkward, messy new beginnings?
Once you identify your season, honor it. Stop demanding a summer harvest from yourself if your soul is currently in the middle of winter.
And to directly combat that human myth of scarcity, you have to actively practice abundance.
Identify one resource this week that you've been hoarding out of a fear-based scarcity mindset.
It could be giving public credit to a coworker on a project instead of keeping the spotlight entirely on yourself.
It could be taking an hour to share your specialized knowledge with someone junior to you, or simply offering your time to a community effort.
Prove to your own nervous system that giving away a resource does not diminish your worth.
It actually builds the very community that will sustain you.
That is a deeply powerful place to land.
Let's rapidly summarize the core truths we have unearthed from Parker J. Palmer today.
First, true vocation isn't a lofty goal you hunt down with willpower. It is your own authentic internal voice that you must finally listen to.
Second, closed doors, rejections, and failures offer profound directional guidance, showing you the natural ecological limits of your true self.
Third, your darkest moments are not enemies trying to destroy you.
They are the gravity pulling you down from an unsafe altitude of ego to a solid foundation of humility.
And finally, you have to honor the organic, cyclical seasons of your growth.
Embracing the clarity of your winters just as much as the output of your summers.
It all comes back to that initial vital tension we discussed. You simply cannot force your life into a shape it was not organically meant to hold.
Exactly. So here is a final reflection for you to mull over today or even use as a journal prompt.
If your life could speak to you right now, completely separate from your ego, separate from your boss's demands, and separate from your family's expectations,
What is the one undeniable truth it is trying to tell you?
stop trying to be the hero of someone else's story.
Your deepest gladness and the world's deep need only intersect when you step fully, bravely, and authentically into being you.
We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and a spark of inspiration. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, and check back for more episodes as we dive into new worlds of thought, one book at a time. Until then, keep your mind set in stone and your curiosity open. This has been a Big L Riz Media podcast, where big ideas meet lasting impressions.